Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And we are very excited to showcase this next guest here on our network, so sit back, strap in, and get ready for a wonderful ride. On the line with us today, we have GEORGE Aukema. We're going to be discussing two fantastic books by her. The first one, Ashevilles Spring. The second one that we're briefly going to touch up on is called Ashevilles Christmas. Both of which are in a collection, a series of books. Hopefully more to come. We'll touch up on that later on. But to purchase the books, you're going to want to head on over to Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, or to gather everything that Karen has in store, make sure you're doing yourself a favor and head directly to her personal site. And that's KarenGAukema.com. Karen, traditional spelling, Karen, the letter G, her last name, Aukema.com. There you'll find more information on Karen herself, more information on these fantastic books, as well as find hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's KarenGAukema.com. And I will say, Karen was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by some of the best movers in the business. Sweetspire Literature Management. So if you have a book that you'd like moved, listen people, do yourself a favor and contact Sweetspire. You can find out more information on them at sweetspireliterature.com. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Karen here on the line with us today. First and foremost, just to have another set of books to add to the shelf is always a good thing. But it's children action adventure novels that we're going to be discussing, right? With wonderful underlying messages and themes. So of course, because it's a fictional narrative, it's created first and foremost with the emphasis on entertainment. But that underlying message is it's all about acceptance. It's all about showing respect to others that may be different from yourself or different than what you're accustomed to. And guys, if that isn't a mouthful for everything that we are going through today. Now, we are not children, but we are very childlike sometimes when it comes to not really accepting others and, casting aspersions that way. So I'm very much looking forward to this, and Karen is the expert. She's written the book, she's done the research, and she is going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. So without further ado, let's jump right in and let's get it started. Karen, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you so much for being a guest with us today. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Benji. It's nice to be with you.
Listen, the pleasure is all ours, okay? We're very much looking forward to this. It's a pleasure having you on the network and being a guest. And as I said, I think your books, the underlying message that we're going to be discussing today, I think is so profound and so beneficial. How could we not invite you on to be a guest? So we're really looking forward to this. I know my listening audience is as well. Karen, before we go into the book, let's hold off slightly because I know we have so much information to cover. But start, please, by telling our listening audience a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Okay. Benji, I grew up on a farm and ranch. Mm-hmm. I'm an educator and taught English language arts for several years. And so as I was teaching school, especially high school, I guess some of the reasons I wanted to go into writing is I found that there were a lot of students, especially young boys, mm-hmm. that really didn't have a love for learning as high school students. And that love for learning really needs love for teaching, a love for reading. Their love for reading really needs to be developed right. when they're in elementary school. So that's one of the reasons I started writing is I wanted to write books that had a little bit of my background mm-hmm. and also appealed to boys and girls, not just girls and not just boys. Right. So I try to make my books where they appeal to both and especially to boys.
Fantastic. Karen, let me be the first person, I'm sure you get this all the time, but let me be the first person to tell you here on our network. Thank you very much for all of the work that you had done and hopefully continue to do, shaping and developing the minds of future generations. Because my listening audience knows this already. I had a very brief stint in education myself. And I have a lot of friends that are educators still to this day. And if there is one thing, educators never get the amount of credit that they deserve for how much work that they have to put in. And also the number of hats that you have to wear, because you were an English teacher, right? But I'm sure there were certain days where it's not just literature that you're teaching, right? You had to be a referee, you had to be a therapist, you had to be a friend. I mean, a counselor, exactly. I mean, the list goes on, and educators never get the amount of credit that they deserve for the hats that they have to wear. So thank you very much for all of that. And, again, nothing but continued success to you and all of your loved ones. Karen, without further ado, because the anchor for today's interview is all about Ashevilles Spring. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
Okay, so Ashevilles Spring is about a little boy. Mm-hmm. The main plot line is that he is living in the 1930s. The setting is in Florida in the 1930s. And I had a reason for that setting. My mom and my dad. My dad's a straight-up cowboy. And he grew up in the 30s. My mom did as well. And I wanted it to have that setting, a little different setting to bring about a today message, if that makes sense. Yeah. So Ashevilles, as a young boy, has lots of adventures with animals and plants that we have in Florida. We have alligators. We have Florida panthers. We have a lot of beautiful plants and things, wisteria, honeysuckles, all these beautiful things in Florida. And so he's going through meeting these. He has a kind of a mentor friend that's a cowboy, and he meets a Native American girl, a Seminole little girl. Mm-hmm. And so he's going through learning how to be respectful and kind and to appreciate her and to become a real friend. And he has to choose quickly at the climax of what to do when their friendship is kind of at risk.
Karen, let's talk about inspiration for a second. And you've already briefly started to go into it with your introduction. Now, when it comes to this particular book and that underlying message of acceptance, when you were creating this book, and I'm sure, as you stated, your educational background has a lot to do with it, but talk to us about what inspired you not only to create this narrative, but specifically to make sure that that message was included. Why did you feel that the words you were putting on the page would be beneficial to the children that picked it up?
I thought it would be beneficial, Benji, because as a teacher, we witness so much bullying sometimes. Yeah, and students struggling to accept each other because we're all different. Mm-hmm. And we come from different ethnic backgrounds and socioeconomic backgrounds. And so those were probably, my classroom experience was probably the main reason I chose this theme.
Fantastic. Now, sticking with the concept of inspiration, but stepping back a little bit, because as I stated when we first started, this is not the only book that you've written. This is actually the second book in the series, Ashevilles Christmas being the first. So, in terms of being a creative writer, obviously you went into a career of teaching, but specifically with English, right? So, I'm sure reading was probably always a hobby of yours and something you enjoyed doing. But talk to our listening audience about what inspired you to embark upon a creative journey and now write multiple books and hopefully more in the future.
Yeah, that thing about students not really having a love for reading on the high school level. I did teach 1 year in middle school, and I think it was that year I was teaching middle school. I was thinking about a book, and I was going to ask my dad a couple of questions and just get his thoughts on it about the setting for Florida in the 1930s, because he grew up then. He always wanted to be a cowboy and had lots of cowboy experiences as we were growing up. We lived on a ranch. We got to do all those fun things. And I realized as an adult that I got to do a lot of things that a lot of kids don't get to do today.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to show and illustrate some of those things that go on in a ranch, but bring out those special themes. So that's kind of where the inspiration was. My dad, my background, and the classroom.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Guys, again, here on the line with Karen G. Aukema. We're discussing her wonderful books, Ashevilles Spring, and we're going to be touching on Ashevilles Christmas in a second, both of which are available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, but make sure you're heading over to her personal site to gather more information on each of them. And that's KarenGAukema.com. You know, Karen, next question that I'd love to get into as we close out of Ashevilles Spring, because I do want to give us an opportunity to quickly go into the other book. What was a highlight for you in writing this book? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you that you weren't expecting before you began on this journey?
One of the highlights was just making this come together and how easy it was when I realized what the theme was going to be, mm-hmm. About friendship and how the main character Ashevilles comes to conclusion, how he was taught by his mentor, the Cowboy Pete that's in the book, and how the Native American aspect. I did a lot of research on the Seminoles, and that was really fun, and learning words that the Seminoles used. And even there's a little cameo appearance in the book about Chief Tallahassee. You know, our capital is Tallahassee here in Florida. Mm-hmm. I did not realize until I did the research that there was actually a Chief Tallahassee, and he's in the book. And I think it's made it a really good, interesting way for Ashevilles to learn. He has a dream, and he dreams about Chief Tallahassee, and he gives him kind of some inspiration to be the person, to be the friend that he needs to be to Cosetta, the little girl, Native American Seminole girl in the book. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of surprised how that come together, but that's how things do for writers. They come together as you research.
That's how things come together for artists, right? I mean, it just kind of starts to snowball, and all of a sudden it comes together. You know, Karen, curiosity for myself, because I can't move on until I know this, because that was a wonderful little piece of information that you just gave in terms of the Chief Tallahassee there. And now, I'm not from Florida, but I am from the East Coast, so I've been to Florida a number of times. Tallahassee, is that named after the chief, or was there any correlation there when you were doing your research? Did you come across anything?
From what I can tell, it was named after him, but he actually wasn't in Tallahassee. Mm. He was at a nearby city. Okay. It wasn't a city then, of course, right. But he was a chief over like 20, 30 families. They had their own village, mm-hmm. and so forth. And I think because a lot of things in Florida are named after Native American names, that someone in the Tallahassee area loved that name when they got to meet him and learned his name, that they named it Tallahassee. I haven't been able to find if he did some significant things in that area, but it wasn't far from there where he actually lived and had his village.
That's fantastic. A wonderful little gem there. Thank you very much for satisfying my curiosity. I appreciate you. Karen, let's move on. Let's quickly touch up on Ashevilles Christmas. Give us a brief synopsis of what it entails.
Okay, Ashevilles Christmas is the beginning book, mm-hmm. where Ashevilles actually meets Cowboy Pete for the first time. He rides into town. Cowboy Pete is wearing these awesome boots that little Ashevilles just thinks they're so nice. And the cowboy befriends him, takes him on some cattle drives, things like that. He's lost his dad at the end of the book, at the beginning of the book. Oh, wow. He's lost his dad. And so this Cowboy Pete comes into the picture, and it's kind of a mentor to Ashevilles. And he befriends him, and one of the things that happens is the cowboy decides that he wants to make Ashevilles Christmas really special. So he works through the night on a really special project. And the Christmas story is within the story within his dream. And then because of the Christmas story, he sees in his dream, the cowboy sees in his dream, he is able to do something really special for Ashevill for Christmas. And that's kind of the story in that, doing things for others, serving others. That's the theme for Ashevilles Christmas.
I love it. Listen, Karen, last couple of questions here as we tie into this fantastic interview. Mm-hmm. What's next for you? I mean, we have these two narratives, which are absolutely incredible in and of themselves, but this is a series. So is there another book or another journey that Ashevill is going to embark upon?
There's a couple more books. There's a couple more books coming, more Ashevill books, probably Ashevill Summer, Asheville's Autumn might be the last one. Mm-hmm. And then I'll start doing more novel type, a little older kids, but I really like children's literature. I fell in love with children's literature when I had children and have just always had a special spot. And then as an educator, I can't get that out of my system. I just think there's such a big need for that, for paying attention to what children are into, what their problems are, what the things that they struggle with on a day-to-day basis, and then writing about those things and put it in, and even put it in a different time period. It works great. It doesn't have to be a modern day. We can learn lots of life lessons in a different time period. So it's kind of a little easier. Sometimes nostalgia and vintage things come about more easily. The themes come about, but children still learn the messages.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, Karen, you said a mouthful there, and we know that all you have to do is open the history books, and you can search throughout history, and you can find, when we're talking about the underlying message of acceptance, regardless of background or differences, I mean, we know that history is littered with examples where that has not happened. Right. So I love what you're saying, and I do agree that there is a lot of value in researching that. Now, last question here, now that we know that there are more to come. Karen, I love having this platform. Being an artist myself, I'm in a different medium, but I love having the platform to pay it forward, in a sense, to other artists out there listening in. In this instance, other writers out there. Karen, you are someone that has been through the process. You've written these 2 books. You have more on the horizon. But not only that, you've also gone through the gauntlet of getting the books published. And anybody that's been through the process understands writing the books are only half the battle, right? So
exactly.
You've gone through it. You've come through the other end. So I'd love to steal any words of wisdom that you may have for any new writers out there listening in. What would you like to tell them?
I'd like to tell them that you could go ahead and start writing. Writing is so important. Practice writing and coming up with your own stories and fictional characters and themes that you want to bring about in your books. But then attend some writing conferences. I went to a writing conference that was presented by Richard Paul Evans, one of my favorite authors that had like 40 New York Times bestsellers in a row. And he did an amazing job, and it helped all of us writers that are beginning and in the process of writing. And we met lots of people, lots of resources. He brought resourceful people like book agents and others, and his manager and publishers and others to the writing presentation that helped us get a feel and put us in touch with those people that can help us. So that he was amazing. And I have a book agent I work with. Her name is Dana Linton from Utah, and she has Day Agency. And those resourceful people you will meet at writing seminars and writing conferences. So I encourage you, anyone that's wanting to go into writing, to attend some of those.
Absolutely. Guys, listen, at the end of the day, it's one of the oldest cliches in the book. Practice makes perfect. And whether that's practice by just writing, putting the pen to the page and writing the words, or by going to these conferences, by networking with people, it's all going to just sharpen your skills. right? And make you a better writer in the end. I love it. I absolutely love it. Guys, I'm going to say it for you once again. We're at the end of the interview now. I know the majority of you are already there, but let's re-impress it for the rest of you, okay? We just finished discussing her wonderful books, Ashevilles Spring and Ashevilles Christmas, both of which are available through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, but make sure you're checking out her personal site, KarenGAukema.com, to gather everything that she has in store now and everything that she'll have in store in the upcoming future. You surely will not be disappointed. Let's get lost in the journey. Karen, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for being a guest with us today on People of Distinction.
Thank you, Benji. I enjoyed it.
Come and be a guest with us on People of Distinction.